Welcome to What Went Wrong, where today we're going to be covering Keir Starmer and his time as Prime Minister, which started in July 2025, I believe, Max?
2024.
Oh, sorry, July 2024. I did know that. We're going to cover kind of his what he's done so far as our Prime Minister, his successes, his critiques, and our sort of disgruntled with him, I suppose. How you doing, Max? Are you looking forward to this episode? Because I know you're a Labour member, so
Oh, well, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. There's a lot of critiques to go at, so he's got to dive right in there.
yeah.
Talking about Keir Starmer's U-turns on government policy. It's attracted a lot of hatred from people on things like the child benefit cap, the inheritance tax, and more recently on the local elections, which to many people show that his leadership has been quite weak, indecisive. You know, he's most likely internally conflicted, and he just doesn't give off he doesn't give off being a strong leader in any sort of way.
Well, I mean, the main issue is he's kind of playing into that, just being weak, and he's not even letting himself have those moments, because there are some policies which might have ended up being fine in the end, but then he's kind of backed down away from it before it can really be shown what the consequences would end up actually being. I think that's kind of the issue with it. It's like the fact that it's the U-turn that's the issue. It's not the making mistakes, it's that he's stopping the whole thing before we even know if it's even a mistake in quite a few of the cases. That's what I think is the issue with it.
Yeah, well, I think with the local elections, he was very much backing down to the pressure from the right wing to hold those elections, even though they're restructuring the council makeup and making it much more regional. And so if people were elected for the elections in May, if they were elected, they would only be in office for 1 year. And so there was a justification to delay those elections, and yet he's still given in to the, certainly more pressure from the right wing and reform over that issue, which I think reflects his leadership.
Yeah, and I think that's a similar issue with the digital IDs as well, in that I don't believe that it was strictly a bad policy. We don't really know what the negative consequences of that would be directly. How do I describe it? He's kind of backed, as I said a minute ago, he's backed out before we actually know whether it would have worked or not. It's just pressure from the right, and he's kind of just let them walk all over him, and I think it just looks really bad.
Well, I mean, the digital ID was able to handle a lot of votes to reform in that aspect, because there was the worry about state surveillance, about individual freedom, and so I'm not sure whether that U-turn was the right thing to do or not, but it certainly hurt him politically, the whole idea of the Online Safety Act.
It's just but I do think people love to complain about it a lot when it's not necessarily a bad thing to U-turn, because at least we don't have that sense of the unknown. I don't know if I'm kind of contradicting myself, but at least he's able to listen to people. You know, if you're going to look at both sides, he is able to kind of recognise when he might have made a mistake and sort of then change it before it becomes a mistake. Even if it's not necessarily going to be bad, you're not rolling that dice and risking it.
Well, I mean, he has always presented himself as the sensible man, a moral person who came from a working class background, whether you believe that or not, and that's been a lot of his politics, being sensible, moral, being a sort of middleman. But I don't think U-turning on, 14 different policies is a good thing. It's quite a lot.
It's a lot.
I don't think
between
that many
10 and 15.
Yeah, I don't think that many U-turns shows his sort of pragmatism. It just completely undermines his leadership.
Yeah, I agree. I was just looking. Was he a human rights lawyer?
Yeah, he was with Crown Prosecution Service.
Yeah, you just made me think about that because you said about him being sort of the comfortable sort of moral choice. I thought that was quite interesting. You know, that he has origins in human rights laws. If you compare it to the right at the moment, talking about the ECHR, and I don't know, I thought that was quite funny when I thought about that. Yes, we've got here the no clear sense of direction or vision for the country. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, Labour, when they were elected, their whole manifesto slogan was change. It was the idea that after, whether you were convinced by that and voted for them, that after 14 years of Conservative government full of scandal, economic decline in pretty much every aspect, there's going to be this new government that came in and changed things. It hasn't really gone down that way, and depending on where you are on the political spectrum, you have very different views on it. So a lot of left-wing voters feel he needs to go and commit to much more progressive policies over like the economy. So like renationalisation of water companies, for example, instead of trying to regulate them, which is what Labour's current policy is. So there's attacks from the left, but there's also an attack from the right wing in that, well, many would say, including our local MP, that it's sort of a return to socialism in a way with the railway renationalisation. So I don't think it's necessarily that his policies are divisive. I just think they're not really committed to them in any way, and there's no really clear sense of direction.
Yeah. I was just going to clarify for people. Max is referring to Gareth Davies, who is one of our local MPs, who we might try and get on this podcast at some point. We'll see if we can get anything. You don't say. But he's one of our local MPs. He talks about that. Do you want to speak a bit on nationalisation? Because you kind of briefly mentioned that with when you're talking about the train from the railway.
Yeah, I mean, there has been a lot of talk about nationalisation over the years, particularly with the railways. Many people have been completely frustrated with how high rail fares are and how the privatised rail system with the franchising and, the government constantly selecting the same private contractor because the market's not really... Well, I don't think that having a market in railways is particularly a good idea, but that's your own opinion. But a lot of people have been frustrated since the railways were privatised in 1993. And this is potentially a way for Labour to win back voters, particularly with like the young aspect.
Yeah.
But the problem with this is you're not going to realise the change in the railways until way after the next election.
Yeah, that's very true. I do think when it comes to the railway, it's definitely targeted. Well, I don't know, it's difficult actually. I think it's actually quite a good one because it does target young people quite a lot with, obviously students use trains a lot, but then I do think it's potentially going to persuade some more left-leaning conservative voters, the sort of young men and women in business that, again, take trains a lot. I do think it's got quite a wide spread, really. I think it would do quite a lot for them, really.
But it's whether the nationalisation fixes the problem in the railway is the key issue. Because the whole reason they were privatised in the first place is because British Rail, well, they could never find funding for it, for one, and it became very sort of politically isolated, similar to the other nationalised utilities. And so there wasn't consistent funding and there was generally poor service. I mean, you can make the argument that they were cheap and awful back then and now they're expensive and awful, so it's probably better. But there's not many people on the right wing of the political spectrum would blame the privatisation for these issues. Or they're reluctant to, particularly with the water companies.
You can't pin it on massively easily, can you?
Yeah. It's a very divisive issue. Thank Maggie for that one.
Yeah, I was just going to look, because I think we do need to obviously talk about the budget, the mini-budget.
Which budget?
The the budget, not the mini budget. That's Liz Truss, isn't it? The
Yeah, we don't
budget,
want that
the
again.
budget this year, last year,
Yeah, about the two
the
child
autumn
cap.
budget. Yeah, because obviously
Well,
that's a pretty key moment in his time as prime minister. Really, it's quite a divisive point in his career. I would argue.
well, I think Labour, throughout their history, have had a lot of accusations from the Conservative Party about being a tax and spend party, where they always raise tax, and that's how they lost trust on the economy. If we're going back to the 1980s and the 92 election, it was that people voted for John Major and the Conservatives because they wouldn't raise taxes, even though they did it 30 times, but hey ho. And the current Labour Party, I mean, they raised taxes 40 billion, by 40 billion pounds in the first budget, and 66 billion in this one, and I think that's a very risky move politically, because one, they are going to face those accusations. Two, people are not going to be happy if their quality of life is not measurably increasing, if more and more of their income goes away in tax and there's no measurable improvement.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, they struggle to see the positives of the autumn budget.
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot there. It was a bit of a raising tax, but we're not going to directly tell you that because then we're going against some
Stealth taxes, yeah.
Yeah, so income tax, the paper mile, electric vehicles.
The EVs
tax.
and hybrid charge.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally don't really have too much of an issue. Like, I do think you want to be promoting electric cars, but now I understand that if there's a big shift to electric cars, and if they're not getting taxed, then that's a lot of lost tax money. I kind of understand that.
Yeah, from the fuel duty. It's one of the
Yeah.
biggest sources of government revenue.
Exactly.
But
So
that budget...
I don't really...
Yeah, that's fine. That budget in general was quite unpopular, mainly because of the tax raising. Also, the two-child benefit cap, which, depending on where you sit politically, is a very controversial issue. And a lot of people think that the welfare state in general has expanded too much. Whether that's entirely due to people on child benefit, it's a point of contention.
Where do you stand in terms of the two-child benefit cap?
I think they should have gotten rid of it.
Really?
But that's a separate debate, and I've got my reasons, don't worry.
Well, I mean...
But the autumn budget, Labour were meant to go for growth. They were meant to try and stimulate the economy. It felt very underwhelming. And that was...
I remember seeing it and not really recognising anything. I was like, oh, this is a proper good change. If you know what I mean? Like, I'm not a fan of raising the two-child, or removing the two-child benefit cap, not even raising it. And if you don't want us to go into the reasons of that, I shan't. But I don't know, I was very disappointed with the whole budget, I think.
Right, do you want to talk about the social media game?
Yeah.
Because this is where the Greens and Reform have really, upped it. We saw the Gorton and Denton by-election. The Greens being very effective on campaigning, very controversial, by putting their poster in Urdu as well.
Yeah.
And
yeah. I don't know, I think people that have an issue with that don't really understand the meaning of it, to be honest. It's more symbolic rather than anything. Like we were talking about it with someone the other day, and I'm not going to name names, but he was saying that it should be in English. It's an English country, and it's still in English. There's just multiple versions. The whole having it in Urdu, it's just symbolic to make people feel what's the word? It's just to recognise a very important
make them feel
culture
welcomed
in the area. Yeah, it's just to give them a little bit of recognition, make them feel like they actually belong, and it's basically just saying, we see you, we're the party for you. That's what they're doing. it's symbolic and it's just a clever strategy for votes, and obviously it worked. And I don't think there's really any issue with that. I don't really understand the issues with it, or the issues people have with it, personally.
Well, I mean, the whole immigration debate is very much like a generational divide. I mean, I was talking with my grandparents the other day, and they feel like the country's changed. They're very hostile to immigration, but we don't really share those feelings. And that is another point of contention for Keir Starmer, is that immigration is under control a bit more than it was 2 years ago. However, people still think there's far too many small boat crossings, far too many people coming into the country, whether that's beneficial or not. People are just generally hostile to it. And that's one of the issues, particularly, that have led to Reform having a lot of support, is their stance on immigration, and Restore Britain as well, even though they're not an official party yet.
No, thank goodness. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. We'd probably do a whole episode on immigration at some point, because it's a very interesting topic. It's so divided, and I think there's a lot of things that need to be made clear for a lot of people.
Well, there's so much misinformation.
Sorry. Yeah. I don't want to go too far down the by-election, because we might do a separate episode, a breaking news on the by-election itself, as well as we've got an episode on the Green Party coming out in the next few weeks. So we won't go into too much heavy detail on that. But if you want to, we need to talk about social media in terms of Labour, which has been controversial-ish. I would say I've seen some of their TikToks. They've obviously tried to
Keir Starmer's TikTok account. Yeah.
They're obviously trying to copy strategies. I don't know. I don't think many people buy it. What do you think? It's just a bit obvious.
Compared to the Greens, who are probably like the model for how to do social media campaigning recently, especially with how their memberships exploded, I think people can see that Labour, particularly on social media, are trying to claw back votes, whereas Reform and the Greens feel like something new. And there was a guy who was interviewed in Gorton and Denton, and he was like a landlord or something like that. And he said, well, we need radical politics because the two main parties have failed. And so whether Labour's unpopularity on social media is because of like the general discontent of the population, or because of their actual strategy, is a question.
Yeah, it does feel, like you said, a desperate attempt to draw in their lost voters. I know, there was one that I kept seeing people talk about, where he posted a video and it had an audio talking about, what was it? So it was like a thing about immigration. Do you know what I'm talking about? Oh,
there's been a few.
There's a song that was on it, and it was talking about because she's foreign, and I remember people having a bit of a field day with that. I don't know, maybe you didn't see that, but
was it the one where he was walking out of Downing Street?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I don't know. I can't remember who it was. The musician.
Anyway, Keir Starmer's not got that many followers.
No, do you know what it is?
Reflects his unpopularity.
Relative to like Reform or Green.
No. I've got no clue.
I don't know. I feel like they're not the party of the young people anymore. I don't feel.
Oh.
I think. I don't know statistically, but from people that I speak to, I feel like, the younger people, I don't really know how much of them would call themselves Labour supporters. Sorry, how many of them even. It's quite bad.
Well, there was a poll done on this. So from the 18 to 24 group, currently, 40% would vote Green, 25% would vote Labour, I think it was 10% Reform and 10% Conservative.
Mm.
And historically in elections, there was that clip in Parliament of young people chanting Jeremy Corbyn a few years ago. Historically, Labour have always had very high support among the young, the student vote in a lot of aspects, particularly under Blair. And I feel like that section of their voter base has just been completely taken away, mainly because of the tuition fees issue.
Yeah.
They haven't really presented a plan to solve that. I mean, the Conservatives did, but people, I think, see that they got it wrong when it came to student loans. There's general distrust with them over that among young people.
Is there anything else we need to cover?
We can
You
do
put a little
about,
bit here about. Sorry, go on.
No, what are you going to say? 'Cause
So there's a little bit here about the NHS.
yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, the NHS that Labour inherited was the worst it's ever been, probably in its history, I'd like to say. I think waiting lists were at 7.7 million. They're now down to like 7.1 million, and you'll always hear Keir Starmer, when he doesn't talk about free breakfast clubs, he'll talk about how NHS, there's a record number of NHS appointments. The problem is that hasn't reflected in the waiting list, and so people are still very, annoyed with the service of the NHS, this government's handling of it. So it has got marginally better, but there's still so many issues within it.
See, I struggle to talk on this because I have private healthcare, so I'm actually not too. I don't have any personal experience with the NHS in recent times, but obviously I know it's still not great. But how much of that is to really blame on Starmer? Probably not all that much.
Well,
am I right in saying that?
As much as you like to talk about the 14 years that they inherited, this is one of the points where I think it's justified. And I mean, the waiting lists in 2010 were about 2 million, and it was the best healthcare system in Europe. 2024, after they gave all the contracts to their mates for NHS work and all that, it was in a right state. And so there has been some improvement, but there's still industrial action from, it's not junior doctors. Can't remember which section of the NHS. They solved the junior doctors' industrial action, but there's still some parts of the NHS that aren't at all, impressed with their salary. And they've lost 25% of their real terms pay since 2010 with junior doctors.
Yeah.
And people are just generally disillusioned with this government, and that the NHS is like Labour's thing. It was created by Labour 78 years ago, and to see there not being enough change within the healthcare service is quite frustrating for a lot of people.
It's just like, what can you even do about it at this point? Like, it's not like we're all sitting here and we know how we can fix NHS and we're not being listened to. It's just...
I got a book on it, but...
Yeah, but do you know what I mean? There's not like a clear answer that's being neglected. It's a very, very difficult situation.
Yes.
I don't really know what any Prime Minister would do.
Yeah, I mean, in British politics, the NHS is like a sacred, religious artefact. You just can't criticise it. Ever since it's been introduced, there's been no talk of any other types of healthcare systems that could be used. I mean, in most of Europe, they don't have it quite so socialist as we do.
Yeah.
They have insurance companies competing and the state providing a minimum level of care. However, the NHS is still the most efficient healthcare system in the world per pound. It just doesn't receive as much funding as its European equivalents.
I had no idea about that. That's quite interesting. It's
Yeah.
the most efficient system. It's the most efficient healthcare in
Compared
the
to European.
world. In Europe, you mean?
Yes. Well, America's not the most efficient system.
No, well, no, I guess that, no. Oh,
Well,
that's quite
America is fully market-based healthcare system, which is not what you want. But the European
No.
countries have a very different way of running things. And it's strange that such a socialist concept of the state providing collective healthcare. I mean, Bevan had a quote on this and he created it. And he was a socialist. It's weird that in a country that is basically half Margaret Thatcher, half Clement Attlee, they've accepted the NHS for so long. And I think we should still keep faith in it.
Yeah, I think, just to kind of conclude everything, I think, obviously, things aren't going all that great right now, but as much as I hate to say it, I think Keir Starmer gets a lot more critique and a lot more hate than he really deserves.
Well, it's cultural. Hate the politicians. And that's just generally quite a trend. There was a graph of the Prime Minister's polling rates from when they became Prime Minister to when their elections were and when the end of their term was. And Keir Starmer's, he started about here. It was just straight down. He's got the worst approval rating of any Prime Minister ever.
That's crazy.
Which is ridiculous. The fact that Liz Truss has a higher approval rating than Keir Starmer is crazy.
It is just brutal for no reason, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a mediocre Prime Minister who isn't solving key issues. I don't think he's the worst Prime Minister.
No,
there's ever been.
I think he deserves to be forgotten.
Oh, shit.
As in the history books, he shouldn't go down as being the worst Prime Minister, or even a terrible Prime Minister. I think he's just someone that chugged through, didn't do all that great, but he didn't completely destroy anything. As you said, he shouldn't have worse ratings than Liz Truss, who literally did damage. He hasn't really done damage.
Yeah, well, it was the Bank of England, not her, actually.
Okay.
That's what she says. I mean, she's a little Trump lover, so it's interesting.
And with that, we're going to finish the episode there. Thank you very much. We'll be seeing you next week or the week after with what we're going to... I think we're going to go through maybe the rest of the left-wing parties. Maybe just the Green Party, or we might put the Lib Dems in there as well. Or we might just go through the 4 other major ones. We'll see kind of how it pans out. Thank you very much.